it's difficult to overestimate the influence of Augustine on the subsequent development of European thought. He was the godfather of Western philosophy in so many ways. We're lucky that a huge body of his sermons and writings have been preserved, and also some of his sayings, perhaps the most famous of which is that saying, "Our hearts are restless until they find their rest in you," which is rather a lovely thought, isn't it? So with that bit of background on Augustine, let's turn to the scriptures we've just heard this morning. It's always a bit awkward when today's gospel gets read in church because Jesus says, "Call no one Father on earth, for you have one Father in heaven." And then we look around at a church that is stuffed with fathers and mothers and reverends and very reverends and venerables and right reverends and canons and deans and bishops and archbishops and, the most reverend is what you must call the Archbishop of Canterbury when we have a new one, or Your Grace, or My Lord, yeah? Do you know, sometimes the church sounds more like an episode of Downton Abbey than it does the church, don't you think? And I say this as someone who occasionally does get called father. Personally, I prefer Tom. You can always just call me Tom. Or rector or canon if you prefer my job titles. But father, that makes me twitch a little bit. Not least because of this very reading. Titles aren't evil, but they can be dangerous. They can puff us up. Yeah? And Jesus says, don't do that. Do you know, I remember going to one church, I shan't name it, but where I was briefly the rector there, and somebody very kindly donated us a carpet to put down in the children's area of the church. And I said, thank you very much indeed, but pop it over there in the corner and we'll put it down later. And I came back to church a few weeks later. And it was Claire who noticed that the carpet was still rolled up in the corner. It hadn't been put down in the children's area. And she inquired of the lady in charge of the children's area why. She said, why haven't you put the carpet down? Oh, Father Tom hasn't said we should actually put it down. Yeah. And this kind of notion of father knows best is an old idea that still permeates in parts of the church. My dad had a row with a vicar once in our home church in King Stainton. The new vicar insisted that everyone should call him Father. And my dad was talking to him one day. He'd come down from the tower. And you know what bell ringers are like, aren't you? They can be a pretty curmudgeonly lot, if you ask me. Well, my dad... Sorry, Gary. Sorry, Bill. And sorry, Helen. My dad... and Bob's here as well. My dad comes down the tower and he says, "Good morning, vicar." And the vicar says, "Father." That's father to you. And my dad simply looked at him piercingly and said, "I have only one father on this earth, and he's dead," and turned around and walked away. Never went back to the church, because my dad felt that this particular vicar was using that term to denote authority, power over it. But Jesus says, don't do that. And his point is simple. Titles don't make you wise. Wisdom is not about where you sit at the table or what people call you. Wisdom is ultimately about humility. And that's where Ecclesiasticus comes in. He talks about those who work with their hands, the smiths, the potters, the ploughmen, and those who spend their time doing those practical tasks that we need, that keep life going. And then he moves on in the passage that Gary just read to talk about those who spend their time searching for wisdom, pondering the hidden meaning of things. Now, both those roles matter. Those who seek wisdom, says Ecclesiasticus, will be remembered for generations. Now, that doesn't mean that only philosophers and bishops count. Wisdom is not a monopoly of the clever. It's something all of us are called to inculcate in ourselves, to learn. Which is why I love an image from a book on philosophy by Augustine Garda. It's called Sophie's World. Hands up if you've ever read or seen Sophie's World. Yeah, there's a couple of you here. You'll perhaps remember this early image. Garda says, imagine that the world is a rabbit being pulled out of a magician's hat. Yeah, you can't see how it's done. No idea how it was achieved. But he says, most of us live on that rabbit. Yeah? And we live buried in its fur, deep and cozy. And we're caught up with the shopping lists and the GP appointments and all the things we've just got to get done. But there's a few, says Garda, a few who manage to scramble up the hair of the rabbit, right to the tip of the top of the hair, and peer out. Those people are trying to look into the magician's eyes. They want to know how the trick is done. And that, says Garda, is philosophy. Asking the big questions. Who am I? Why am I here? What is the world for? And if you want to see that in action, then just watch a child. Children are natural philosophers. They don't live deep down in the rabbit's fur. They climb. They ask, they prod, they question. I take my grandson, Lucas, for example. Spend half an hour with him and you'll be interrogated like a suspect on line of duty. Why is the sky blue? Why do dogs bark? Why can't I have another biscuit? Why do you wear those funny clothes at church? And the killer, the one that really got me, why are you so old? Children don't stop asking questions, do they? And that's because they haven't yet accepted the rabbit's fur as their permanent home. We, on the other hand, we get a bit comfortable. We stop asking. And that's dangerous because the big questions don't go away. They just lurk beneath the surface. We ignore them. Let me put it another way. Most of us live life like it's Tesco. We go in, we grab a trolley, we get what we need, and we get out. Milk, bread, petrol points, whatever. But every now and again, someone stops in aisle 5 and says to themselves, hang on a minute, who built Tesco? And why are we wandering around with fluorescent baskets in this sort of modern cathedral? Is this a new kind of church where we make our offering at the altar of the checkout and receive blessings in the form of groceries? And come to think of it, who am I? And why do I need 12 tins of beans when I only came in for milk? You see, that's what philosophy, the search for wisdom. Philosophy, the word, means love of wisdom. It's Tesco shopping with your eyes open. Now, Augustine of Hippo, and you were wondering when I was going to get to him, weren't you? Augustine knew all about that. He had all the titles, he had the swagger, he had the career, but he was restless. Deep down, he was asking those childlike questions. And eventually, he managed to scramble up through the fur and look straight into the magician's eyes. And from then on, he never stopped. He never stopped reminding people that wisdom is not about cleverness, it's about humility. He once said, the first thing in religion is humility. The second thing in religion is humility. And the third thing in religion is, guess what? Humility. He realized that only when we approach life humbly, like children, do we start to see clearly. We give up imagining that we're wise enough to know the mind of God. We give up imagining that we know exactly what we should or shouldn't believe in every circumstance. Because when we've reached that point, we've shut down the philosophical task. We've shut down the search for wisdom. And here's the challenge then. Don't just live buried in the rabbit's fur, my friends. Don't just do the shopping and pay the bills and watch Strictly and call it a week. Continue asking the big questions. Who am I? Why am I here? What is this world for? And don't bother asking them in the pub, because you'll probably get somebody telling you aliens built the pyramids. But instead, ask them in prayer. Ask them with the scriptures open in front of you. Ask those questions in humility, because you might then glimpse the magician's eyes. So yes, you can call me Rector, Canon, Tom, or even Oi you if you find me loitering over the biscuits in the aisle at Tesco's. The real question is whether you and I are willing to climb together to be as curious as children and to let that wonder reshape the way we live. That is wisdom, not pomposity, not titles, but humility, curiosity, and the courage to keep climbing. Amen? Amen.